Well, hello there.
Hello, how are you? No dancing in the background this week.
Me dancing. Oh, that was playing drums, actually, not dancing.
I didn't see any of that. How are you doing?
I couldn't dance this time because I've got a dog in my lap. Just so everybody knows, this is how I spend a lot of my day during the day. Little Falcor wants to jump up on my lap. I give him a pillow to sit on, and oh, we have such a nice time. He is the sweetest little dog.
That looks very productive. He looks very comfy.
Not
I've got
too
mine under my desk too. Stephen, can I humor you? Will you humor me for just a minute? Something pretty fascinating happened this weekend, and I wanted to share.
Let's see.
I think you'll appreciate it. Have you ever seen a baby bird actually catch it the moment it flew its nest, left its nest? No.
I think so.
So we had. I'm going to share if I can here. We had a little nest of robins in our backyard. I've spent 2 weeks. Can you see that? Watching them. Isn't that fascinating?
Baby dinosaurs.
Baby dinosaurs, yes. This is Mama with the 2 babies. I promise I'm not going to go on and on, but this is just fascinating. I thought you could relate. And this is the 3rd guy. His siblings left the nest on the 14th day. On the 15th day, he was there alone. And I spent hours. I was determined to catch the moment he left the nest. I didn't catch it on camera, but I did watch it, and it was fascinating. It made my weekend, and I'm still on a bit of a high, I have to say. So I thought you'd appreciate that because I know you love to spend a lot of time outdoors. And
well, I do. I think it's an excellent reminder to me, and I think to everybody, that what you spend time on, what you look at, what you let into your brain is what you will think is important and useful and valuable. And I think one of the big problems we have as civilized human beings is that we're like completely disconnected from our own world. We barely ever touch our planet and our planet. And so we don't think about our planet and natural life very much. And that's part of the reason we're able to destroy so much of it. But yeah, that was beautiful. That was lovely. Thanks.
So that isn't what people are here for, though, this week. So I know that you have a very unusual package to share with our audience. So do you want to take it away?
Okay, but I just want to point out that you made an assumption that people come for the PL sequel and not for our excellent conversation surrounding it. Maybe we should do a poll sometime. I don't know. I really would like to think that people come to hear more about my concerns, your concerns about the world out there and what we're doing to it and how we can fix it and save it and make it better and enjoy it than PL sequel. But okay.
All right.
Until we have confirmation, I'll continue doing a PL sequel to it. And so, yeah, what I thought I'd talk about today is share with you a very unusual package called the standard package. So share my screen.
I will share your screen, and I think we're going to get that infinite. Oh, no. Good. I thought we would.
Get it out of the way. So first of all, what I want to do is ask all of you, do a little quiz. I'm going to show you a piece of code that you might find interesting. It's a block of code that declares a bunch of stuff, displays a message, executes a query. Let's get rid of this other one here for now. And then has an exception for no data found, and then displays the SQL code. We talked about SQL code last week, so you should be able to get this spot on first time. So the question, folks, is what will happen when I run this block? And remember, when I run an anonymous block, the first thing that PL SQL engine does is compile it and then run it. So the first question might be, for example, will it even compile? Will this code run? What will it do? So let's give you a little bit of time to look at that code. I'm pretty sure some of you have probably seen it before, since I've presented the same sorts of things for 25 years now.
So I will excuse myself from the quiz because you did quiz me on this yesterday. We all know how that ended up. Niels. And
I can't see the screen since I'm sharing, so.
Niels is saying Aura 01403.
Okay. So we're now the SQL code would actually be negative 1403, right? Okay. It wouldn't say it was a SQL error message. Anybody else? Is that it? Is he the only brave one among you?
Jamal, Elizabeth, we know you're there. What is your answer?
And I'm glad, Elizabeth, that you appreciate the conversations on environmentalism. Okay, so let's go ahead and run the code and we'll see, because one of the nice things about code is you don't have to wonder what will happen. You can actually run it and see what will happen. So I'm going to clear this out, run my code.
You did said 100.
100. Okay, now, first of all, I would like to point out, that's interesting. So going back to last week in SQL code, what Judith remembered is that when no data found is raised, and this looks like a good candidate for raising no data found, the error that is reported by SQL code is 100, not negative 1403. So good job, Judith. However, none of that's true. So first of all, actually, I'm going to run it again because I forgot to re-enable my dbms output. I'm going to clear the script output, run the script again. Okay, so first of all, it displays true here. And then what we get is an unhandled no data found exception. An unhandled no data found exception, even though the only thing we handle is no data found. Now tell me that doesn't blow your mind. Just a teeny weeny little bit. Okay, so we have an unhandled no data found exception, even though the only thing we handle is no data found. So what the heck is going on here? Now, first of all, I wouldn't be surprised if some of you are saying, there's no way this code will even run. How could it run? You're declaring a variable called varchar2. You're declaring a new type of data called date, but it's actually a Boolean, and then a variable called toChar, and then wait a minute. And I'm declaring an exception called no data found. Now, first of all, the reason this code will compile and run without errors is that these things are not reserved words in the PL SQL language. They're keywords, but they're not reserved words. So here's an example of a reserved word. Let's name my variable begin and run this code. Now we get a different error. We get a compile time error, PLS. Encountered the symbol PLS integer, expecting one of the following. In other words, this thought it was starting a new block of code. So some identifiers, some names you cannot use, but varchar2 or let's do another one, dupe val and index. I'm going to declare an integer, a variable called dupe val and index. I don't think I used varchar2. I can run this code. And now we're back to the same old unhandled no data found exception. Okay, so what's going on, first of all, is that these are things like toChar, no data found, dupe val and index. These are identifiers declared in this standard package, and I'll come back to that in a second. But now, in terms of why we see an unhandled no data found exception here, the situation is that I have declared my own exception, no data found. And because of that, inside the scope of this block, any unqualified reference to no data found, and by unqualified reference to a PL SQL element, I mean package dot or schema dot, but in this case, package dot. Since I have an unqualified reference to no data found, this no data found is resolved to be this, not the no data found that you're used to thinking about and was raised right. Come on, give me that. Let me raise it. Oh, I have to run it again. So my point is that this no data found right here is not this no data found. Mm-hmm. How do I fix this code? Let's see, do we have anybody who can come up with a suggestion about how to fix this problem?
Well, I did want to say, so you did, if it makes you feel any better, fell into the same trap yesterday. So I think that was, Stephen was expecting that to happen. And Vasudev was earlier on, remarking on some of the strangeness of your declarations. I want to know, Stephen, are you just trying to keep us on our toes, or would anybody ever write code like that?
Well, in my long experience on planet Earth doing PL SQL coding, I think the answer is sure. Somebody somewhere is probably coding something like this because, of course, there are a lot of people writing PL SQL code, so who knows? But no, I think that hopefully nobody's writing code like this. You shouldn't write code like this, but it's important to understand why it's possible to write code like this, right? So first of all, in general, if you declare something with this name, any reference to that named thing will resolve as close to the scope as possible. Since it found a resolution for no data found, it never got to doing this, which is what everybody was thinking it was doing. Let's run this code now, standard.noDataFound. And now it's going to reconnect, I suppose, or something like that.
And Neil's, this was Neil's prediction, was
Yeah.
Neil's suggestion. Yeah.
Right. So now it works. And now we see error 100 for SQL code. Okay. And Mills, of course, you mentioned last week, I think it was, the weeks go by so quickly, that you can't call SQL code inside SQL, but you could if you did sys.standard.SQL code. And I'll come back to this later because I still don't have an answer as to why it is. But the answer is that a lot of the things you think of as being a part of PL SQL, the core language, is actually elements defined in the standard package. Let's pull up the standard package spec. So if you have access to a sys account or DBA privileges, you can go and look at the source code for standard package. And this is one of two very special packages inside the PL SQL language. The other one called DBMS_standard. Now, what's special about them is you don't have to reference them with dot notation. So in general, if I have no data found here, if I don't have it here, and I don't have standard dot, then when I run this code, I'll see the same thing I saw before. Package completed, procedure completed successfully. I don't know why it says PL SQL procedure, but whoop, what did I do? Begin, let's get rid of that. Oh, date, true, semicolon. Not sure what happened there. There we go. And there's 100 again. So the way we write our code generally is that we take standard for granted. We assume it's there and it's got all this great stuff for us. It's a very deep assumption. Most of us don't even know about it. But when I compile a piece of code, the PL SQL compiler says I need to resolve every reference to an identifier. So for example, this is a valid identifier in PL SQL since it's got the double quotes around it, and it found a reference to it or a definition of it here, good. When it comes to something like no data found, it says, is there anything in this code called no data found? No. So then I go and step out of the current scope and I check the standard package or DBMS standard package to see if there's something there. And since there's something called no data found, let's go look. Since there's something called no data found here, oh, there it is, it's an exception. This code compiles. So that's what's going on behind the scenes. So when you think about exceptions like dupe valid index and program error and invalid cursor, et cetera, these happen to be particular exceptions that the PL SQL team took the time to declare inside standard. Then they use the exception init pragma to associate it with a number. Oh, a number. No data found. Look, there it is. 100, not negative 1403. And because they took the time to do this here, then we have access to these things with an unqualified reference without standard dot. Now, you'd like to think they'd also add things to it, but they don't seem to do much changes to this. I haven't seen a change in a long time. For example, I'd love to see them put the for all negative 24,381 SQL code error here as well, since nobody ever remembers what that is. But the standard package is pretty cool. So it's got these exceptions in it. Let's take a look at the top. If you go to the top, you'll see things here that you can't do yourself. But that's okay, it's a special package. But you'll also see lots of really interesting things like, let's see, Boolean has these values. Now, where's PLS integer? Here's binary integer is an integer with a specified range. And PLS integer, where are you? PLS integer is a subtype or a rename of binary integer. So you can actually see some elements of how the PL SQL language is defined here. And you can see things that don't make a whole lot of sense. For example, look at decode. Look, decode is declared as a function inside the PL SQL language, but you can't call decode from within PL SQL, only from within SQL. So I'm not sure why it's here, but there it is. And obviously, we don't have this sort of pragma. We don't have a built-in pragma. So anyway, fun stuff. And interestingly enough, we can also look at the package body. It's not wrapped. And I believe the reason they don't wrap standard is that it has non-standard things in it that wrap doesn't know what to do with. And you don't really see a lot of interesting stuff in here. For example, a lot of them are just pragmas out to sea. Just this says, this is implemented in C code. But then there's some fun stuff like, let's look at SQL error message. Body for SQL, not necessary, since they special cases and it never gets called. Cool. How about user function? Look at that. Remember, every time you call the user function, it does a select from dual. So watch out for that. Anyway, lots of interesting things going on here. I suggest if you can get access to the file, take a look through it just for some jollies, because of course, what better things do you have to do than just look through some bizarre PL/SQL code? Oh, and here's another fun thing. Look, equals is declared as a function inside the standard package. Now, I'm not sure why, and I've actually tried to overload. I've tried to create an overload of that using my own equal sign, but that doesn't work either. So there's the standard package. Now, the other package is DBMS standard, and I don't have the source code for that available right now, but the commit built in, for example, rollback, those are parts of the DBMS standard package. So basically, unqualified elements of the language that are database related, not language related. So for example, inserting, the inserting function. Inside a trigger, you can say if inserting, if updating, if deleting. Those are functions defined within the standard pack, the DBMS standard package. All right, any interesting comments we should take a look at?
Right, I keep forgetting that because you're normally very good at following the comments, but you're blind to them today, right? Hemant asks, how is DBMS standard different from standard?
So I probably just covered that, but the way they're the same is that they're both default and that you don't have to qualify the reference. And I believe that they just drew this line between elements of the unqualified references they wanted to support that were related to core database activity, things happening in the databases as opposed to things happening in the PL/SQL language. So they moved all of that into a separate package. And why doesn't user call itself recursively? Well, I suppose it could try that. Oh, you mean in the implementation? Here, let's go back over to that.
And based on what you're revealing about yourself and the fun things you get up to, I'm surprised you haven't tried that before.
Well, I think what he was actually asking there is, look, the user function is calling itself. Mm-hmm. Why isn't this then recursively going into infinity? Because this is not the same as this. Can't you tell this is uppercase and this is lowercase? Come on. Oh, wait a minute. It's a case-sensitive language. What could it be? It's a non-case sensitive language. I know. This is a PL/SQL function. This is a SQL function. So the PL/SQL function calls the SQL function to get the user. Therefore, it's not a recursive sort of thing. Okay. So let's see. That's the basic tip for today. What else did I want to show you? This froze? No. Okay, good. Okay. Right. So in general, do not name things that are being named by inside PL/SQL, the PL/SQL code base. And in fact, if you turn on warnings, it will give you a warning when you use one of these identifiers that PL/SQL uses. Again, your code compiles, so it's just a warning, not an error. But they do urge you to not do that because it can be really confusing. Yes, it can be really confusing, as anybody looking at this code would say. Mm-hmm. That's really confusing. You can modify the standard package. You could, if you had admin privileges, you could modify the standard package and then compile it back in. Like you could say, let's look for sysdate.
That could really mess with your developers, eh? If you
always return date 2020 01 there. So now sysdate will always return that date. So totally kidding here, folks. Totally kidding. First of all, if you modify the standard package or DBMS standard package in any way, do not call support and say, I modified the standard package. Can you help me? Because you probably just broke your agreement with Oracle and they'll probably suspend your support license. You don't want to make any changes. You definitely don't want to recompile the standard package. This is all built into PL/SQL. Don't screw around with it.
This is why Neelish and I get along so well. His mind went where I did. So he wants to define true as false and mess with people's minds.
That should be fun.
Neelish?
And I honestly, I've never recompiled the standard package. We probably can't actually compile it. It's probably got to be done under certain circumstances.
Yeah.
Right. You can give it a try.
My people too.
You've got your always free database, right? So you can log into your admin account and play around with standard, see what happens. Let me know.
Niels had a question. Is user also defined in DBMS standard?
Not as far as I know. No.
Okay.
I don't think there's any duplicate definitions. In fact, that would be a problem because neither of them are qualified. So if you had the same function in both of these packages, how would the PL SQL engine know which one you wanted to call? And by the way, before I forget, so I had mentioned, thanks to Nils, I learned this really amazing fact that even though you can't say insert into table, insert into T values SQL code, this gives you an error, but this does not. I went out on Twitter and I let everybody know, wow, this is really cool. I learned this new thing. Does anybody know why this is true? And I could not get a satisfactory answer from anybody. I got lots of interesting replies. So I still don't understand why this would be allowed in SQL and this wouldn't. I'm assuming this SQL code is simply a public synonym on top of the fully qualified reference. Here, let's see what's in here. It's not even declared, huh? So it's not even declared inside the standard package, those SQL error messages, though it says we're never actually calling it. Okay, interesting stuff. If any of you ever do find out why this is not allowed, but the other version is, I'd love to hear about it. Couldn't get a straight answer. And the same trick Judith says does not work with SQL error message. I did not know that. Okay, why don't you stop sharing for a moment?
Yep.
And the exception to pragma, that's right. So in fact, Jamal, if you might recall from when I talked about SQL code, if you try to do a pragma exception in it and you reference -1403, it will be rejected. You actually can't do a pragma exception in it to -1403. It has to be to 100. So, I don't know how much this matters in your day-to-day lives, in your PL SQL day-to-day lives, but I think it's good to understand how some of the architectural elements of PL SQL are put together. It's also interesting that, PL SQL is a copy essentially of Ada. So a long, long time ago, towards the end of the 80s, a team inside Oracle was tasked to come up with a language that could be written once and run anywhere Oracle runs. And fortunately, Oracle didn't say we can write programming languages better than anybody. That would have been a disaster. It would have looked like T-SQL from SQL Server, in fact. Not a disaster, but not a great language. So instead, thank you, Mundi. So instead, what they did was look at existing languages and ask which ones would be good fits for us. They looked at PL1 and Ada and chose Ada. So we get packages and all sorts of great stuff from the Ada language. One of the interesting things about Ada is that you can actually set a default package in your code you're writing. So you could say, I want to make unqualified references to this elements in this package. I'm glad we didn't do that in PL SQL because that could be really confusing. I'd like to always have it be .qualified with the package name unless it's the current package. Then it makes total sense. Okay, so end of tip. Hopefully that was useful to you. So we have, for the remainder of our time together, in case you want to skip out, I'm going to talk about a few different organizations. We're going to pick somebody to choose who to donate to. And Michelle, you can pick the person you want to ask to do that. And then I'm going to share with you one of my other favorite books. So do you want to?
You know what? I'm gonna pick Neelish this week. He hasn't picked yet. And Neelish, if you're around, then have a look at the organization Stephen's about to share. Okay,
so this week, first of all, the Octopus Foundation helps support.
Oh wait, I'm not sharing your screen. Sorry. Okay, I'm sharing now. Here we go.
Okay. So first is the Octopus Foundation. I don't know how much any of you know about octopuses or have read about them. They're truly amazing creatures. Well, every single creature on planet Earth is amazing, like the birds who actually are dinosaurs, right? Dinosaurs have never left this planet. They just look like birds these days. Octopus, the octopi or octopuses, I guess there's a question about which one works, incredibly smart, and their brains are completely different from ours. They're actually distributed brains. They have a brain in their head, and they have brains essentially in each one of their tentacles. And they can operate independently. It's just amazing. They have apparently an incredible sense of humor. They can escape from almost anywhere. If you have a gap that's, I think, larger than an inch, an octopus can escape through it because the only hard thing is a little bone in its head that is that big. Anyway, truly incredible creatures, obviously under threat, under active attack by human beings when you come right down to it. So octopi. The Amazon Emergency Fund, need I say more? The latest reports indicate that the Amazon rainforest is now releasing more carbon CO2 than it is sequestering. Oh. So we're reaching some really awful tipping points. Let's do what we can to save them and stand with those who live there and want to keep it the way it is. And finally, save pangolins. Pangolins are other amazing creatures, not only because of the way they look, and they are one of the most hunted creatures on planet Earth. They're used for, the scales are considered to be good for medicine in China, and their meat is eaten as a luxury. So it's just terrible what we're doing to them. They will disappear soon if we don't take steps to stop it. So Neelish, let us know which one of those three you think we should donate to this week as I move on to my favorite book of the week. And it is called My Life. Oh, and can you stop sharing so I can make sure I'm getting this thing right? And boom. So it's called My Life by Alfred Russel Wallace. It's his autobiography. And I'm betting that a lot of you don't know who Alfred Russel Wallace is. So I'm going to take a short moment and ask you if anybody has heard of Alfred Russel Wallace and a letter that he wrote in February 1858 to Charles Darwin. Ring any bells, folks? Ring any bells? So Charles Darwin is considered the discoverer of evolution by natural selection. And I won't go into the details of what that means. Hopefully you have some basic understanding. And he spent decades, literally decades. He was like the original data scientist, spent decades building up a body of knowledge, gathering information from scientists and biologists all around the world to confirm his theory about how species evolve and change over time. And he wanted to get it all together into this awesome compendium nobody could take exception to. So he was like working, decade after decade. Alfred Russel Wallace was an explorer. He went out to the Amazon. He went out all over the world, exploring the world and actually collecting things because he didn't have money like Charles Darwin did. He had to earn his money, and he earned it by collecting things and sending them back. Anyway, in 1858, he had a fever dream. He was out in the jungle, I think in Indonesia, and he had this fever dream, and he woke up with the core concept of evolution by natural selection in his head. And he wrote it down. He wrote up a letter, sent it to Charles Darwin, who they were barely acquainted, saying, you know, Professor Darwin, Mr. Darwin, I have this amazing idea I want to share with you. And Charles went, oh my God, my decades of work is about to be eclipsed by this man who just summarized the entire theory of evolution by natural selection. And he talked to his friends, and they scurried around to help him reduce his treatise to something that could be presented to the, remember what the Linnaean Society back in 1858. So to Charles Darwin's credit, and it's really quite wonderful, Charles Darwin didn't shunt Wallace aside and go ahead and announce his theory. He arranged to have both his theory, his presentation, and the letter from Alfred Russel Wallace submitted at the same meeting. So they are co-discoverers of evolution by natural selection. And the means they got to that concept is completely different and really amazing stuff. And Alfred Russel Wallace is a truly extraordinary human being. In a lot of ways, he was very famous in his day. He was more famous than Darwin and a very popular element of society. And then he went off into some interesting directions around spirituality that were very ascientific, unscientific, and kind of lost favor and has never gotten the recognition he deserves. So I encourage you to read his book, My Life. It's really remarkable. And yeah, that's my book. Hopefully that was interesting because that.
Yes,
I couldn't believe it when I first found out about the life he lived and how he made that discovery.
So Stephen, Neelish, you've got to read this. He picked octopus because you can tentacle them to make them laugh.
Oh, that's a good one, Neelish.
He's good, eh?
The octopus will appreciate it. I'm sure there are scripts inside Oracle that will recompile standard. So that's a question mark. I don't know. I haven't looked at that file, if I ever did, for ages. So there's no question that there are times when standard will be recompiled. We just don't want to do it ourselves. Judith asks, is Charles Darwin's theory finally accepted in America?
Oh, that's a bit of a diss.
No, the answer, Judith, is no. There are millions and millions of Americans, and not just in America, but we are one of the bastions of ignorance today who do not accept evolution as essentially fact. We can call it a theory, but it is one of the most proven theories available in science today. It's just incredible. In fact, the AIDS virus was real-time verification of evolution by natural selection. And I see a comment from Brian.
Yes, sort of back to how you started the show with, which I think is really nice.
I really appreciate that, Brian. I got to say, folks, these days, with what's going on our planet and how the efforts of humans to stay comfortable and have convenience and meet every desire over hundreds of years is now forcing major collapses around the world. We've all got to start paying more attention. We've all got to start taking what actions we can. And I'll tell you, my parting comment for today, we can talk about reducing plastic and all these other things that you can do. My feeling right now is that one of the core, most important things any of us can do is simply go outside and experience your planet directly. And simply by doing that, right, just watch closely. Just go out into your backyard and just sit down and don't move for a little while and stare at the ground. And you'll be amazed at what you see and what you learn. And the more we do that, the more we simply commit our brain to absorbing the world around us as opposed to, say, absorbing a television show, the more we'll think about it, the more we'll care about it, the more we'll want to do more of that. And I think that's what will turn around humanity, better than admonishing you about your plastic, though I certainly feel that way too. So go outside, be with your planet. It loves you. It does. And we need to love it back. All right. Thanks for joining me and sticking around through all of that. Subscribe.
Things. If you
also, check out our PL-SQL, our next level PL-SQL page on the INSOM site. So in case you didn't know this, I offer my services to review code, and it's a very streamlined, fast process, and it's not very expensive. So if you'd like to have me look at some of your code as your team and give you feedback and have a mentoring session together, just check out next level PL-SQL.
I don't have an answer for that. Is there something else I can help?
Oh, be quiet.
That is fantastic.
I had to try my keyboard because Falcor started leaning his head on my keyboard. Okay.
Never work with animals. All right.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Happy coding. Stay safe. Again, the COVID virus is now tanking economies and societies worldwide. Once again, we are not going to learn, obviously, but you can learn. You can wear a mask, and you can isolate as necessary. So please do that and help us get this under control. Take care.
Thanks, everyone. See you next week.
Bye.